Daddy's run out of milk. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Gatesway to the Future.
3D video games didn't exist until 1992.
And Windows 98, but faster.
All this and more coming up on this week's show. Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech. Hello everyone, we are joined this week by Clint, a man with a sizable 1.7 million subscribers on YouTube. You're the big dog, Clint.
I'm at least one of the dogs, yeah.
One of the
humble
birds.
as ever. As humble as ever.
I'll take it.
Thank you for joining us, Clint. I know you've got a lot on your plate, lots going on. Dave, how are you this week?
I'm okay. I've been busy. I was reinstalling my NAS software, my NAS operating system last night. I found there's a problem with partitions, and the workaround is do a fresh install of the operating system.
Okay, did that work?
Yes.
Good. Well, we've got operating system news later today, haven't we?
I know. That's why
stuff.
it was relevant, I felt, to bring it up.
Yeah.
Other than that, I've been all right. Just been busy. Just there's not enough time in the world, is there, Neil?
Oh, tell me about that. We'll come on to that in a minute. But let's go to Clint first. What retro stuff? I dared say, have you done anything retro this week? Because every day is a retro day for you, Clint, surely.
Yeah, less so these days since most of my collection is no longer with me. But
yeah.
It's somewhere else, but not here anymore. I'm in a blank room. But occasionally I do still get a little retro thing. And this week's, I'm sad to say, unfortunately, I've been playing Depth Dwellers on Steam Deck. And
okay.
it is an infamously terrible, terrible game that I covered many years ago on LGR, like right at the start. And it is the worst. And I don't know why they're selling it. They're charging $2. I just found that hilarious that of all the games to get a digital re-release, this thing made by like two people in Texas back in the day. It's like all the sound effects are done with the developers' mouths. Like the textures are from Home Depot, like just hardware store. It's wonderful.
Do you think your coverage has anything to do with its present day popularity?
I hope so, because I'm like the only one that was ever covered it. And in fact, I think I own the only big box copy of it. I've got the only one of those. The scans you see online are from me. So if it's not my fault, then I don't know.
Only yourself to blame. Only yourself to blame. Have you caught any of the revision demo party this weekend, Clint? Did you see any of that?
I did not know that was happening this weekend. No.
I didn't know it was happening. I completely forgot. It's every Easter, but I completely forgot because I just didn't see anything at all on socials. You normally see something prompting you, but I saw nothing. I caught some of it. Dave, did you see any of it this weekend?
Yeah, the two ones I like to watch are three. I like the old school demos. I like the Amiga demos, and I suppose I do like the PC demos. And I managed to catch up on all of those. Saturday night, I was so tired. I went to bed at like half past 7, I think it was. So I missed that as I had to catch up. But they're getting better at putting the catch-up videos on.
They are, yeah, because they always run over, and that's just the nature of these kind of parties. So I got to 11 o'clock Sunday night and thought, no, I've got to go to bed. And they were 2 hours behind and an Amiga down, so they were really struggling. But they got it out there in the end. There were some great demos this year. There was Hoffman came in with a Neo Geo demo. Nice to see something on that platform. A couple of nice Amiga ones when they did get their Amiga up and running.
I liked the tractor one in particular. The tractor one was fun.
Yeah, and the sheep and the motorbike. Anyway, just go to YouTube and look up Revision 2025 and you'll find videos of all the demos. So go and check them out. Always worth watching. I don't think we've got any other news this week, have we, Dave? Nothing of significance?
Well, last week we did say there was big news.
Oh, yeah.
And there is big news. Neil?
Nearly forgot, yeah.
You've been on the show since the start. This is episode 216. It's over 4 years, and
it's time to hang up the headphones. But don't worry. The show will go on. The show will continue weekly. We did see some speculation that the show would no longer be weekly. How can we be called This Week in Retro if it's not weekly? Come on, guys. So it's me hanging up my headphones was the news. And that means some change, but that means some really positive change for the show because I don't know how much I can say this week, Dave. There are...
Don't say too much this week because it's not
say too
finalised yet, and I don't want to say something when it's not. And also, it should be about you leaving. It shouldn't be about anything else.
Okay. So I'll just say the show will go on, and I'm looking forward to listening to it in its potential slightly tweaked format. No, the format will stay the same, slightly tweaked hosts. So I'm looking forward to what you, Dave, and others will do with it. I will be back. I know you've left the door open for me to pop back and be a guest as and when, so I'm looking forward to doing that. And the main reason for it primarily is just family life. It's got very difficult to squeeze everything in that I need to do, keep my focus on the cave and the podcast and the family. And this week is a real crunch time now because Lily, my wife, is now going back to work after 8 months adoption leave. So, she's got to squeeze in work as well, and I've got to pull my weight on that side of things. So there's just too much for me to squeeze in. Something had to give. Sorry to say it was this week in retro, but please don't panic.
Yeah. So I've tried all I can think of to persuade Neil to stay, but he won't, and he's given his reasons. We're still getting feelers out for Jason coming on as our third host, and it all seemed positive from last week. Lots of nice things said. I think you'll see Jason again probably in 2 weeks' time. As for who's replacing Neil, I've got someone in mind. We won't announce it till next week because it's not finalised yet. This week, though, is all about the sad news of Neil quitting the show.
It's not sad.
It is sad. It's tremendously sad. As somebody who's watched, ever since you started doing the video versions, come on, Neil. Like, you are the guy. You're the one that got me into this at all. I would not have known about this had I not watched your stuff. And then, you were that sort of gateway into it. And then all of a sudden you opened up this, to me anyway, this wider world of all these things going on. I honestly wouldn't have known about half of this stuff if it weren't for this show, and by extension, you being on here at all. So just thank you for your service, genuinely. And
thank you, Clint.
Coming from you, it's sad, but I get it, and I wish you the very best. As you've died. It's sort of a weird funeral for yourself here, but hey,
forever in our hearts. So it is the end of an era. All good things must come to an end. So long, and thanks for all the Sam Max. Neil, I hope will still come on as a guest from time to time, especially when he has something that he wants to shill. Do you have anything to shill this week?
Well, let me tell you about the Mr. Multi-System 2 that's coming out this week. Now, I will be making a video on that this week, so look out for that. But
will the video be out by the time this goes to broadcast?
No, it'll be Acorn Atom Restoration Part 2 of that Trash to Treasure, and then the very next video will be the Multi-System 2, and it is impressive, and there's some really nice surprises. We've filmed all the B-roll. I've got to put it together with Richard later this week, so look out for that. Clint, if you're in the market for an upgrade, drop me a message, because we did do that wonderful wood grain one. Did that survive? Did the wood grain multi-system survive?
It did, actually. Yeah, it got a little bit moist. I won't lie. It had a sort of the roof came in on that one. In case anybody's not aware, I had a hurricane destroy half my house. That was a bit of a thing. So I lost some stuff, but most of it cleaned up well, including the multi-system. It wiped down, and that was it. It was fine.
Okay, well, if you want another one, you just drop me a message. Okay, I'm done shilling, Dave. I'm done shilling.
Maybe that's something to advertise about it. It's wiped down if people are playing all these
wipe clean,
dodgy Japanese games. Yeah. Let's go on with it. I think by the start of the 90s, we knew that computers were the future in business. Without any doubt, I think we knew it by then. Big boxy IBMs had been running Lotus 123 for years by then, WordPerfect or WordStar, depending on which camp you were in. With the word processors of choice, they had already established themselves on some desks. And from my own hazy memory entering the workplace in the early 90s, they were not on every desk. And in fact, despite how things are now, there were plenty of people who were computer illiterate. Not just illiterate, but petrified of them. Resentful of them, distrustful of them, and just opposed to them in general terms. My dad, for example, was a bank manager who finished his career in and retired in the late 90s, having never used a computer for his job. He managed people who used computers, and to him, I guess at the time, it was the same as someone managing people driving trucks or at construction sites, just because he didn't use the equipment, he could still manage people who did. But back then, I think we were in a transition period. Computers were not, by and large, multitasking. Microsoft's Windows 3.0 launched in 1990, but it took a couple of years for it to become the kind of standard office environment. And of course, the big, huge change here was going to be going from DOS and doing a single thing to a GUI, a GUI, where you could do multitasking. Of course, Windows was not the first to do this. In fact, an Apple Mac, for example, could do it years before, but they weren't the serious business computers.
Yeah, that's a very desktop-centric view, of course, Dave. There have been plenty of multi-user, multitasking terminals, workstations doing things by the 90s. But I think you're talking about this from like a general office administration point of view and the mass adoption of computers rather than a specialist tool for a specialist job. Is that where you're coming from?
That's exactly right, yeah. A general purpose machine for everything on everyone's desk, where you may only do some things from a subset of things on it, but you did enough that you had to have a computer.
Well, can you just going back to your memories of that, your first job in the early 90s and there not being a computer on every desk? Mm-hmm. What can you remember from that job? Just
okay.
Tell us about some of the people and delve into your memories.
It was a sandwich factory. And we made something like 25,000 sandwiches a day. So in the office, we had Margaret, who was in charge of all the stock. So she had to order in the ingredients for it on a daily basis. She had take note of what was there and put the orders in. She didn't use a computer. She used a clipboard and a pen, and she wrote it all down. And I put it in at times. I put it in for her.
Okay, so the supply chain was computerized, but
We had. I printed off the labels for them on these zebra machines, these thermal printers that used not thermal sensitive labels, but thermal transfer of ink onto them. So we printed 20,000 labels a day for that. I did that. I also eventually ran a spreadsheet to work out the individual costs of each sandwich we made. Not this sandwich here cost us 30 pence. I mean, the particular brands and ingredients together, how much they cost us so we could make sure the profit margins were there. We had a few, this sounds terribly sexist, we had girls inputting onto data entry terminals. And that sounds terribly sexist, but that's who it was. It was relatively young women doing that, and it was only women. And they were inputting. They got a printed sheet back from all the individual places that sold the sandwiches on how many they had sold, and they had to input. It was all sale or return, so they had to input what had gone there. But I remember Bob, the factory manager, couldn't use a computer, wouldn't use a computer. I remember Paul, the guy that ran the company, had a computer he couldn't use. So it was quite different back then. And just, I think for people younger than me, the idea that you could work in an office and not use a computer, I imagine would be quite foreign for people.
Favorite filling?
Oh, ham, cheese, and coleslaw.
Nice. Clint?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, this has now become This Week in Sandwiches, I'm going to say. So I just have to ask, your go-to sandwich, what is it?
Oh yeah, the ham, cheese, and coleslaw.
Any pickle?
Oh, I quite like pickle. Cheese and pickle is lovely as well, but not in the ham, cheese, and coleslaw.
No. Okay. No, you don't want to get the pickle mixing in with the coleslaw. No.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it took until the end of the 90s for the penny to drop for absolutely everyone that we needed to have a computer. And we went from having specialist operators using them going into the 90s to most homes having a computer as we went into the millennium. And that's a huge change. And in offices, we all had a computer on our desk. And if you couldn't use one, I'd imagine you couldn't do your job. So the reason I'm talking about it this week is a wonderful BBC archive clip that's been submitted by Dr. Local. And it's Bill Gates of Microsoft fame from 1993.
Sure? Are you sure, Dave? Are you sure that's the clip? Are you sure?
Yeah, well,
sure?
You might have watched the wrong one, Neil.
Just to explain, Dave pasted the wrong link in the show notes this morning, and I spent 40 minutes watching the wrong video. I took notes and everything. I was all ready, and then I was like, "Hang on a minute,
Did you enjoy the video?
Oh, yeah. It was a video about Nolan Bushnell talking about the future of computer graphics. It was wonderful.
I've done you a favour. So, this is a 5-minute long video from old Bill Gates in 1993 predicting the future of computers. And it is amazing how right he gets things. Or maybe I shouldn't be amazed given how staggeringly successful he was. The clip starts by talking about the difficulty of the massively expanding Microsoft. They talk about email, and they talk about email for an audience who I imagine don't know what email is. They talk about creating this electronic village where they can all talk to each other. They mention that you can send a message to someone even if they're not there to get it. So they're presumably comparing that to a phone call where obviously you can't phone someone in a different time zone when they're not working. With an email, you can send it and they'll get it. Bill himself comes on and then talks about saying that paper is so inefficient. And it then goes on to a bit of a weird chat about bandwidth in terms of rating their personal capacity to process data. That was just a little bit odd, I thought. Bill then says there'll be a computer in every home, but it may take 10 or 20 years. And he's underestimated how quick it would happen, I think. But he's talking about in 1993. By 7 years, most homes would have one. And they then go on to describe kind of Netflix in a way. They talk about how many TV channels there'll be, and they haven't got the idea of on-demand TV channels, but they've got the idea of thousands of TV channels. Now, you're both younger than me. I know that, Neil, you went on to a career in IT, smacking computers with your shoe because you're a thug and that's how you fix them. What did you think of this?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts. Let's go to our guest first. Let's be polite. Let's have some manners and go. Clint, yeah, what did you think, Clint?
Well, the very first thing I thought was I love the presentation, that sort of style of 90s reporting, especially just, I don't know, BBC, the way that it looked, the way that it felt, the way that it was edited. It was on that sort of edgy kind of thing that just felt like, this is crazy and new and it's exciting and futuristic, but at the same time, it was very grounded in its time. And I love that it started off with that little clip from Robert Cringely, actually, because it reminded me just a little bit of his work. And coincidentally, I was just ripping my DVD copy of his thing, the Triumph of the Nerds documentary series, which is wonderful if you haven't seen that. And just the fact that it started off with all that just pleased me on like just a video making standpoint. But yeah, the fact that it was going into all of these things and trying to come up with ways to describe this new way of doing things in the office and the home was hilarious. The bandwidth comment was particularly odd. It was like Bill Gates has the biggest bandwidth of them all, I think is what she said. I was like, yeah. Really? Okay. But yeah, the whole TV stuff was fascinating. And actually, you said Netflix. It sort of reminded me more of YouTube in a way, as they were talking about algorithms. It sounded like the recommendations.
Oh, yeah.
They were talking about like, oh, how would you even choose? Because there's going to be these thousands and thousands of things out there. You need it to sort of let you know what's out there. And in a way, they were sort of pointing towards the algorithmic recommendation engines that we have now. And then, that whole little tiny bit about the end there, the AI stuff was interesting too, because that was really the start of this whole idea of what AI could be, because they were just starting to get to the point where it was like computers are going to be as smart as a person, whatever that means. But it's just one of those classic early 90s, mid 90s kind of things where everything is so close, but yet so far that it's very quaint. And I love these kind of clips.
Nice. Maybe we could incorporate AI as the new co-host, Dave.
Hey, just use that Notebook LM thing with that podcaster thing that you Google has. It's scary.
Yeah.
I tried that recently and it was disturbing. Like I fed it one of my note pages, the pages of notes for one of my videos, and it turns it into a podcast with two AI co-hosts going back and forth talking to each other. And I'm like, there you go. We don't even need Neil. There. just put that in there. And I mean, once we can replace that with our voices, people are just going to use that to do their podcasts because it's already believable enough, even though these are fake people. I don't like it at all, but it's interesting.
I'll let you into a secret. I started a year ago. Yeah, I've been AI for a year.
I can assure people that there will be no artificial intelligence or indeed any intelligence.
Thinking back to your memories of your job there, Dave, my career in IT started in the 90s too, as a very young man. And I didn't stop to think enough at the time about the broad range of users that were there. I was concerned with setting up and maintaining systems, helping users when they ran into problems. I don't remember, hitting things with a shoe. I don't remember in those early years really stopping and thinking, this person here started their working life before the first generation of home computers were out. This is not second nature to them. It just didn't cross my mind. I was so focused on what I was doing. And it was a few years later when that started to sink in. I remember a role that was particularly user support focused, and I'd do the rounds every day, just chatting to users most days to check in with them. A very different time to the modern day fighting support ticket numbers on the support desk. I had to actively check in on users or they would suffer in silence. I had to go and prompt them for problems in the office. This was around the year 2000 now. One in particular was called Graham. I remember he was 60. He looked like a RAF pilot from World War II, and he liked to talk about trains. Lovely guy. And it was just through talking about what he'd been up to at the weekend, talking about trains, that I slowly gained his trust enough to show him something called the internet, and then give him a training course on how to search the internet. And then he was delighted that he could search for trains on work time on the internet.
Train course.
Yeah. So it was like you had to really gently guide people who were scared of IT in this period, in that example, particularly the older generation, because, it's a big change. And when you're 60 in a job, your focus is probably more on retiring in a few years' time and not investing a lot of time into new skills that you perhaps won't use for a long time, which is fair enough. So this was new and unusual and exciting for users like him. And then you had the shift from the novelty of computers to computers being part of the furniture, the cause of frustration, and just them becoming, part of everyday's offices. And I think in this video, where are we in this video? What year was it? 92?
1993.
So Bill Gates is sort of predicting. I know he went through a period of really pushing not just computers in every home, but computers in every living room at one point, when he was really pushing the, what was it called? Media center. He really wanted to push that at one point. And then the Xbox in every living room. And there are some good predictions in this video. Bill talks about the paperless office, which was a buzzword for a long time. I think we're pretty much there. And I think the shift to paperless office didn't come as a result from digitizing existing systems to be paperless. This was just as a result of the sheer amount of information that companies deal with now. There's no way you could put it all on paper. So paperless office has kind of happened as a default because paper is no longer viable for all that. So that came true. They talk about making money in an information-based society, which is very much where we are now. And then, as Clint mentioned, the Netflix-like comparisons, mentioned that it will learn your habits, it will recommend shows to you. But I love that they just fell just short, because they said, and then your TV will suggest, shall I tape that for you? As opposed to viewing on demand or streaming. It was like, no, I'll learn your habits, and then I'll activate your VCR and record it for you on a cassette tape. Yes, Clint.
I will say that is probably the one thing that stands out in anything from this era is the complete inability to see how far storage and networking capability and cloud stuff could go, because they were trying it. They were trying in all these kind of things with Magic Link and PDAs and everything else. We knew where we wanted to go. Everything was going to be somewhere in this kind of networking, but it happened so much quicker and so much I guess cheaper eventually. But within like 10 years, I mean, we were already having TiVos, right? So it was, I just find that kind of crazy. It sort of surpassed Moore's Law in a way, I think, in terms of storage, capacity, price, availability, and the way we do it. I mean, yeah, just the fact that even these folks at the cutting edge didn't really see that yet is wild.
Yeah. Microsoft was certainly not immune to being caught on the back foot. Yeah, Dave?
And I don't know what the modem speed was it 28.8 at that point? Yeah. We've now gone to, I mean, I've got a gigabit coming into the house. I mean, the increase in between then and now is just ridiculous.
93 though, actually, I had a 2400 baud, I think, in 93. So
that's yeah. I mean,
it was really low actually, because I remember we had 28.8 in like 96. So yeah, this was yeah.
So
One other thing I'll just point out, there was a caption because under a Therese Stowell appeared and did a bit of chat, and they captioned her job role as software goddess.
Yes.
And I think she deserves a bit more credit. So she was a software design engineer and one of the 10 original coders on Windows NT. So a little bit flippant to just say, oh, software goddess, because here's a woman that codes.
Again, it kind of reminded me of that Triumph of the Nerds thing, because it's a lot of that kind of stuff in this 90s coverage of like, ooh, computers, edgy, blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
is it much higher than God, though, Neil? I mean, what's higher than God?
Goddess. Okay, fair enough.
The clip finishes talking, and I like this. The clip finishes talking very briefly about the dangers of sharing too much personal information, which ironically is the new business model for Microsoft. Anyway, good little clip. It's only 5 minutes, but there's a lot to unpick in it.
This week we are kindly sponsored by Pixel Addict, Britain's favourite classic computing magazine. There's a new issue out, and I love the cover because it's got a scene from what I recognise as the intro to Wing Commander, when you've got the orchestra and they're talking about what's the name of the music system in Wing Commander that dynamically changes?
Yeah. The Origin, whatever it is. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same in Ultima 6 and Ultima. I don't think you got that. That screen was in Ultima 6, was it?
Did you? I don't think you got that in Ultima 6. Anyway, that's related to a story in the magazine, from chiptunes to cinematics, with an interview, I think, there by James Hannigan, who is fairly local to me and famous for music on such things as Theme Park World, Command and Conquer, and Dead Space games. So that will be a really interesting article. Anything jump out for you, Dave, in this month's?
Yeah, there's a nice retrospective in Thief, and I've been meaning to play Thief for decades. I've never got round to it.
Not played it?
No.
Oh, great game.
Yeah, you need to do that.
I know.
Really wonderful.
But there's so many games to do, though.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for sponsoring us, PixelAddict.media. If you'd like to buy Pixel Addict, then you would go to the website, which is Clint.
It is Clint.
That's right. Thank you, Clint. It is pixel.addict.media.
I wondered who
Actually,
that was.
It's addict.media. I think they've consolidated into one website so you can get the Amiga Addict, which I don't recommend Amiga Addict. It's all about Amigas. I recommend Pixel Addict. Pixel Addict is a one.
Or Amstrad Addict.
Yeah, or Atari Addict.
Okay, addict.media. Let's move on before we offend them. Do we take this next story as an opinion piece or as a researched fact? It's submitted by Pajako6502, thank you, Paul, and it's titled The First 3D Video Game. In this video, YouTuber 3D Sage attempts to get to the bottom of the question of, did someone just open a can of something on the sneak? Dave, was that you? Own up.
I may have done.
Or was that just you making that noise? Okay, it's possible. Okay. So, 3D Sage is trying to get to the bottom of the question, what's the first 3D video game? And he spends a quarter of an hour in this video exploring it to come to the conclusion that, while pleasing to Dave and I, might not be entirely accurate, but let's discuss it. The whole question hinges on, how do you define 3D? And he explains this in the intro. There's lots of games that use techniques to give 3D effects, but are they truly 3D? Do they count? He gives a nice little primer on 3D space being projected onto our 2D screens, and even gives examples of early games in this primer, such as Maze War, Flight Simulator, going back to the late 70s, 1980. 1983, Star Wars. I think Maze War he's got as 1974. So was Maze War his pick as the first? No, it wasn't. He continues his explanation by introducing texture mapping, more advanced 3D techniques, and methods to mimic these techniques, such as pre-rendering 3D backgrounds in games like Resident Evil, Alone in the Dark, or one of my favorite games of all time, Grim Fandango. And this was the fashion when we were younger men at one point, to pre-render backgrounds, or 3D worlds that use 2D sprites on top, like Draken, or the first FIFA games and other EA Sports games where they introduced the 3D stadium, but the players were still sprites. So he seems to settle on a definition of a 3D game being one in which the world is 3D in real time and texture mapped and characters are fully animated. He goes on to explain more, like raycasting, Mode 7, Doom-like techniques, which he describes as 2.5D. And he explains this all really nicely. It's a really good video. And then he makes a decision which he acknowledges will be controversial. His choice for the first ever 3D game. It is, drum roll please, Duncan. Ultima Underworld from 1992. Knew you'd like that, Dave. And I think that has 2D sprites, doesn't it?
Yes.
Enemies.
Yeah.
So he's allowing that. And then he does work backwards from things like Quake, Mario 64, Descent. Nice to see Under a Killing Moon get a mention, Daytona USA and others. He works backwards, justifying his decision as he stops at Ultima Underworld in 92. Now, let's be fair here. He does say, by my standards. So it's okay to disagree without trying to trounce the guy for having an opinion. It's a very enjoyable video, and it is a good game pick. For me, though, 3D is 3D. I wouldn't caveat it with needing to achieve a minimum bar, be it texture mapping or other techniques. If it's presented in 3D, then it's a 3D game. And that can include wireframe polygons, such as those in Mercenary or Elite. It can include a 3D world with 2D sprites on it. It can be a 1 frame per second dungeon crawler done in 3D or a maze game. I'm fine with all that. And with that in mind, you can consider games like 3D Monster Maze from 1981, Maze War, which he did mention in his intro from the early 70s. That ran on a PDS-1 mini computer and was not only a 3D maze game, it was a multiplayer game and a first-person shooter game. In 1973, according to most sources, although his video says has 74, I think there's just a bit of overlap there. There was also a 3D wireframe space game called Space Sim in 74, which is a 32-player networked space simulator. So there's lots going on back then in 3D. And while they did need very expensive and barely accessible hardware at the time, you can't dismiss them for that fact. So if you want filled polygons as well, 1984's iRobot from Atari, that didn't get a mention. Driller? I feel like that appeared at some point in the video, but didn't get a mention. Was there a clip of it flew past the screen, maybe?
I mean, he had iRobot in there, but it was just a clip. I don't think it was mentioned.
Just a clip.
Yeah.
Battlezone was in there, and that did get a little mention.
Section.
1980. Yeah. So, Battlezone is absolutely a 3D game to me. So, Dave, I'm confused. Are you confused, or are you just happy to have a chance to talk about Ultima?
Well, this is difficult. It's certainly, it is an entirely subjective thing. We cannot be objective here because to be objective, we would need a clear criteria. And
3D.
in setting that clear criteria, Neil, and setting that clear criteria, we'd need to be subjective in what that criteria was. So you can't you can't do this.
He does set out his own criteria very clearly in the video, so we can't fault him for that.
No, my point is that is a subjective criteria.
Yeah.
I am, of course, delighted to see Ultima Underworld given the award as the first 3D game. Ultima Underworld is a bit forgotten these days. I don't think people appreciate all the firsts that it did and how actually still playable it is. It's a great, great game. It's probably the most accessible of all the Ultimas, although it's not a mainline Ultima game. I understand his reasoning, and I agree with his reasoning, but I don't know if that's the conclusion that I would have come to myself. You mentioned the Atari Vector games, and another one that comes to mind is Starglider. So the Atari Vector games, the Star Wars games, are actually on rails, those games. Doesn't feel like they're on rails, but when I went to play them years later, I realized that they are. Starglider isn't. And unlike other similar games, with Starglider going on, it feels like there's enough going on to be a real 3D environment. But I'm sure it can't be the first like this. And I think it comes down to the question, and I think I'm going to agree with you, Neil. I don't think there can be a criteria that says it needs to have this or that to be it. I think it just needs to feel like you're in a 3D world, which immerses you in that 3D world. It feels like it is. And that's when I think Ultima Underworld might beat the contenders that came before it, at least for me. But then again, what was I like playing Elite for the first time in 1985, which is when I think I played Elite for the first time? Did I get sucked into that? Did it feel real to me? It probably did in 1985. And again, Driller a couple of years later would have felt real as well. So it's such a subjective thing. I am delighted to hear Ultima Underworld get mentioned, though. It deserves lots of praise.
If freedom of movement is important to you, then you did have like Red Baron as a vector game from Atari in the early 80s. So they weren't all on rails.
Was there enough going on to make you feel as if you were in a 3D world?
Well, that's another criteria, isn't it? You're adding detail now, aren't you? Yeah.
Well, perception, not detail. So it's. I think you need that detail to fully immerse you, and I don't think it. I mean, Battlezone was immersive though, and that was Battlezone was very immersive.
That was the cabinet and the goggles.
That's right. Yeah.
Clint, you've got the deciding word on this. Tell us, what is 3D? What was the first 3D game?
SimCity 2000. No, it was honestly, that's kind of when you're discussing some of these topics here. What is that? That was 100% 3D in my mind when I was playing it, coming from the first SimCity. Because I mean, look at the perspective. You could see different, 3 different sides of an object at any given time, or 4, or whatever it is. And it's like, sure, that's 3D. But in my mind, also, back then, 3D was like Flight Simulator or something like that, where it was a fully polygonal kind of thing mixed with some wireframes and some objects. It's just anywhere where you could fully explore and choose your perspective as you're controlling it. But yeah, it's impossible to to fault the video, I guess, because he does sort of lay out what he thinks it is. But I will admit the video kind of lost me at that point. I loved the first half of it or so when he was just talking about all of these, particularly the raycasting part. I thought that was a really clever way of showing how a raycaster works. The visuals were really, I mean, you could tell this guy works on 3D engines, right? So it's that part was great, the technical and the history and everything. But then he was like, and by the way, this isn't actually what the video title says it is. It's not going to be the first 3D game. It's going to be the first game that I perceive to be a kind of 3D that I would, define as such with these kind of attributes. And I as a YouTuber, I get it, right? You kind of have to have that short, snappy title that you want to click on. And I actually saw this a couple of days ago, and that's why I clicked on it, because I was like thinking about games like Space Sim, right, on the Play-Doh terminals and things like that. And when it didn't go into that, I'm like, okay, that's not really what I was looking for in the video. So I just kind of tuned out. And then when he got to Ultima Underworld, I'm like, all right, this is not at all what I thought it was going to be, because it's just not even, I would not even consider that in the first 10 years of 3D, it really just depends on your own personal outlook, I guess, if you really want to get down to it. But there has to be some sort of exact definition somewhere. I mean, Guinness Records chimed in with that platformer. So they have a definition. I'm sure that computer scientists have a definition. I'm sure that programmers of 3D engines have a definition. So
maybe the question should have been the first 3D world.
3D world, yeah, maybe.
That's
cool. But what's a world? What's a world? I mean, Space Sim barely takes place in an abstract environment with a bunch of wireframe objects floating around. So is that really? I feel
3D world is a little bit more open than 3D game. I think 3D game, you could argue. Well, I think you would have to argue that we shouldn't be looking at 1992 for a 3D game. The first one. I'd
love it if he'd gone to all this effort, all these explanations, and when he got to the end, just went, "And my choice is 4D sports boxing," or something like that. Just absolutely trolled everyone. But I don't know, some people may feel like that with the choice of Ultima Underworld. We just love it because we've got that connection to it. Yeah, Ultima
Underworld not using the fully 3D characters and spline-based animations. I don't know. I thought that one kind of didn't count by his own definition. So it is it's a very odd one. But in terms of, I think, how a game feels, how much it immerses you. Like I said, SimCity 2000 was the one for me that felt like as real of a 3D thing as anything as I'd experienced.
You were immersed in that game before you even played the game.
Sure. Yes. I just had an imagination that saw these things and was like, look, it's a little city I can manipulate. Even just looking at the graphical screenshots in the box.
I'm the same with Ultima games. I was playing these Ultima games before I got them, if you know what I mean. I was playing them in my head. They're the games that I dreamed of playing.
Actually,
so it was easy to get into.
Fairy Tale Adventure was another one of those that I remember very early on. It felt like a 3D immersive thing. It's a sort of top-down thing from an angle, kind of an RPG, open world adventure thing. And that felt 3D-ish to me. Like it felt like it had depth. It felt like I could, you could go behind objects sort of and see what was inside that building. And, I know it's not 3D, but if we're talking polygons and then you start adding, I don't know why the textures were a part of it. Textures don't have anything to do with 3D to me, but yeah.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the imagination gap now, Neil?
Well, I think we're proving that this is a very open-ended question, and it's definitely one that we should take to the question of the week.
I was going to say.
So we'll bring that back in later for people to share that, because there's probably people shouting at their screens right now about these discussions. So we're going to bring in this question of the week. I do still recommend you watch this video. We're by no means saying it is a bad video. It's a great video. It's just very subjective. So look up 3D Sage on YouTube, or use the link in the show notes to go and check it out.
To the wonderful. To the wonderful.
I'd like to welcome new patrons. So welcome Jack and welcome back David. Thank you very much for signing up to become patrons. Neil, where should they go to become patrons?
They should go to patreon.com/ the Retro Collective.
Absolutely.
No, I'm leaving. No. Patreon.com/ This Week in Retro. And please do keep the support coming in for the show. Do you know what? I'm going to sign up and become a patron after my departure. That's what I'm going to do.
That's very nice, you, Neil.
Yeah.
With the announcement of Neil's departure, there's not much housekeeping. I hope we'll have his news of his announcement or his replacement next week. And hopefully it works with bringing Jason in as well. On to briefs.
So Dr. Local has submitted a link to a video titled 1981. Oh, I know all about this video, Dave, because I spent 40 minutes watching it. How computer graphics will change the world. And yes, I watched the entire thing. I do recommend it. Maybe I'll make it my story next week.
And he also tells us about Airborne Ranger. So this old game is coming back from Microprose. It's a trailer for a game that looks, on the surface, like a military FPS, like Call of Duty type thing. Now, the original Airborne Ranger I didn't play back in the day. I have played it, of course, since. It's a game that at first glance it looks a bit like Commando, but it's not. It's much slower and there's much more going on. It kind of plays a little bit like Gauntlet, but there's strategy and there's stealth going on. There's missions. You're going to photograph things, cut pipelines. It is difficult to tell from the trailer, but it looks as if it is going to be true to the original in terms of gameplay. In other words, it's not just a generic shooter with the old IP slapped on top.
Do you not worry that Microprose is just vomiting old IPs at the moment? I'm still waiting for their VR B17 that they announced 4 years ago.
I did worry until I watched this clip and I thought, do you know, that doesn't look bad. It doesn't look like a bad game from the trailer. It doesn't just look like something just slapped together using easy-to-get assets.
But is it 3D? I mean...
Is it maybe going to be the first 3D game?
Could be the first. Could be. Fuskit has linked us to Dan Wood. He went all the way over to VCF East to do part of the Amiga Roundtable for the 40th year of the Amiga. Were you there, Clint?
I was there for the first one of those roundtables, yeah, and I unfortunately didn't get a chance to say hi to Dan in person. I was trying to, and he got shuffled off one way, and I got shuffled off another way. So we still haven't met somehow. But yeah, it was wonderful to see that. They had like the Lorraine prototype original Amiga 1000 there that they took to the CS and all that stuff. It was really, really cool to see that in person. And just all the folks behind it.
Maybe Dan can come to the cave when you come to visit.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Christ of Why Do You has linked us an article on Polygon on game box art. One of my favourite things is box art. I think all three of us like box art. I think we all love it. Mm-hmm. But he's titled it, Remembering the Good Old Days When Game Box Art Lied to Us. And I kind of don't agree. I think it had a vital role in bridging the gap between the gameplay and what the game needed to be in our heads to enjoy it, the imagination gap. But also, he isn't wrong. It did lie to us.
Yeah, really, I think it was less the box art lying and more of the bull shots on the back that lied sometimes.
Yeah.
Those were, I was more concerned about those and annoyed by those, I guess.
Pajako has linked us to another Polygon article, and this one has screenshots of a cancelled Virtual Boy Mario Land. So check that out. I am blessed to be in the possession of 2 Virtual Boys now after the recent unboxing that I did. And I thought, brilliant, I'll get a link-up cable and people can go head-to-head. There are very few link-up games supported on the Virtual Boy, and it certainly doesn't justify the cost of a link-up cable and 2 Virtual Boys. Even Mario Tennis, there's only a ROM hack that supports head-to-head play on that game. So,
what is the cable just a cable, just an A to B cable, or is there technology inside the cable? Is it something you can wire up yourself?
Just a cable, but it's got a different kind of end. You could probably wire it up yourself, but then what are you going to play on it? You know, there's a nice homebrew Street Fighter that you can go head to head on, but yeah, it doesn't really justify it. Anyway, that's completely irrelevant to Bajako's story. Thank you for submitting that. Cancelled Virtual Boy Mario Land.
And there is loads and loads more on the subreddit. Go and have a look anytime you're having a crafty log. See if you can find something to read. By quite some margin, the operating system that I've installed the most is Windows 98, specifically Windows 98 2nd Edition. And the reason, of course, is simple. It's the last operating system that is functionally MS-DOS under the hood, and I'm going to get comments.
No, it isn't.
I won't make the mistake of saying it runs on top of DOS, because I'll get corrected in that. But when you switch on your computer running Windows 98, you will get DOS, you will see DOS before you see Windows 98. And that's why I install it, because it's easy to stop it at the DOS point and play DOS games in it. It is highly compatible. It's the most compatible version, I think. It has the lowest memory footprint. It's easy to use. It's better with hard drive sizes. And of course, just type in Win and you're in Windows 95. Or Windows 98. Actually, you're in Windows 95. It's the same thing. So it covers the DOS period from 1981. And to be honest, I don't have a great deal of interest until the mid-80s when RPG started appearing on PCs, right up to the late 90s when PC gaming moved to Windows and when DirectX came around. And of course, since it's also Windows, it handles games into the early noughties. So that's why it's good, but it's only half of the reason why I've installed it as often. Sadly, Microsoft hadn't yet worked out how to make a thoroughly robust operating system. They had to contend with an infinite number of hardware combinations, unlike the competition at Apple, where the hardware was intentionally very limited, or the competition at Amiga, where they had gone bust and the Amiga was dead. Microsoft had to manage all these hardware
You know why you've fumbled over your words there, Dave? It's because you tried to say the Amigas died.
Yeah.
Amiga never died, Dave.
Microsoft had to manage all those combinations. So crashes were frequent, the blue screen of death, and sometimes you just had to reinstall everything. In fact, over time, despite dubious claims from registry cleaners that you could fix things, you could not avoid Windows getting slow and bogged down to the point you were better off spending an afternoon reading a book while you tapped the keys as it reinstalled everything. Even these days, I still have a trauma memory of refusing to install any software on modern Windows because I might have to reinstall it. I mean, to uninstall it, sorry, and it won't go. It won't get rid of everything. But the reason why we're talking about it today is a video submitted by Shepo71, and it's of Phil's computer lab, and what he's got is a quick install for Windows 98. The problem with Windows 98 is that after you install, you've got tons of patches to put on there, and they can take hours, on top of the fact it takes a while to install anyway. So Phil's video is in a GitHub project called Win98-Quick Install. So Win98-Quick Install. And to the best of my understanding, and this is new to me, I didn't know about it until I saw this link, it is, so I might not be accurate, it is a project to let you create your custom Windows 98 install, but will also add patches and drivers, and take out some stuff you don't want. But the cool bit is it's actually a Linux-based installer that installs Windows in just 2 or 3 minutes on a Pentium 3 class machine. So even if you're doing a 486, it's still going to be a rapid install, and you won't need all that patching afterwards. So it's up to you if you want to do the work involved to create your own install image, or there are pre-built ones. So when I use this for the first time, that's what I'll do. It's a pre-built one. And I really, really hope this is as good as Phil showed, because Windows 98 installing is quite time consuming. It'll be nice to have a quicker way of doing it. So Clint, I reckon you must have done quite a few Windows 98 installs. Is this appealing to you?
Very much. I did it twice this past week because I was working with a piece of hardware that it installed some crappy software from Sony, and it ruined everything. And the computer would just crash at the beginning. I don't know if it was the drivers or I don't know what it was. But yeah, I had to go through, and because I don't have my SD cards and everything that I normally had where I just swap out fresh installs, I literally had to do it all over again. I'm like, I wish I'd known about this like 5 or 6 days ago. it seems like a wonderful project. The fact that it is doing all of this customization and just sort of creating an image and skipping that the first 2 or 3 stages of the Windows 98 install is fascinating. And it kind of reminds me of like Enlight back in the day, where you could just sort of customize Windows, make a custom boot. And I don't know, I really look forward to trying it, especially on some slower machines, not just a Pentium 3. I'm curious to see how much quicker it would be on like a Pentium 1 or a 486 or whatever, just out of curiosity. But yeah, the fact that it's Linux based is hilarious. I just love that, because it's been this way for just about ever since I've started using Windows 98. Like back in 2000 or so, I had this compact Presario 5000 US, had Windows 98 on it. It was the most unstable, horrible computer with all of this junk installed, and even doing it had Windows Millennium, but we put Windows 98 SE on there because it seemed like it would be a little cleaner, a little bit more fresh. And it was still messed up because of just the hardware and the software configuration. I guess we were reinstalling Windows on there constantly, probably every month. And this is in 2000, 2001. And I went over to a Linux Live CD, one of those early distributions that let you reformat and installed Grub, and had a Linux distro on there. And that's what got me into Linux in the first place, because I hated that install process so much because of that one computer. And I just wish that this had come out like 25 years ago.
You mentioned a Sony there. Was it a Vio by any chance?
It was actually a Sony piece of hardware that I'm installing on another computer. Yeah, it was actually a Sony internal mini disk drive. And
fancy.
Very fancy. And it just happened to come with this software that is terrible. I don't know what is wrong with it, but every time that you use it, it blue screens with one of those VXD errors. And had to actually go down to Windows 3.1 just to get the darn piece of hardware to work.
Wow. Now, I only asked about Vio because people seem to kind of fetishize old Vios, and it just triggers me because I'm like, you weren't there, man. You didn't have to support these things. Going on Sony to get drivers from Sony back then was just horrendous. If the machine had been discontinued just a month earlier, they'd just blat all of the drivers off of their website. You couldn't find them. So Sony Vios, no, not even once. Anyway, this installer, what's not to like? I haven't tried it for myself yet, but I feel like I have, because Phil covers every step in so much detail in his videos. He always does a great job of that. Looks like a great time saver. His one had a bunch of drivers included on the CD2, and half the battle is, once you've got the OS installed, getting the additional files onto it to enable the network card, support the chipset, the video card. So having the common ones on there, or being able to customize your own installer, is a big help. And yeah, I'll try it next time I install Windows 98. Definitely see no reason not to.
I even know on the video that something that doesn't work on a normal Windows install worked on this install, as if it fixed some bug.
Driver, the game driver. He got the audio working, didn't he?
Yeah, by not having all the rubbish that Windows installs with. So I really hope this ends up being the way that everybody installs Windows 98 now, because if we're all using this way, it will become polished, all the bugs will go. There are a number of patches in it that help with data corruption and all sorts of things that might sometimes happen. I've had that in Windows 98, unexplained data corruption, the hard disk getting violated by it, and no explanation of why. So there's patches in it that stop that kind of thing, and hopefully it ends up being, this is the Windows 98 we do, and it's reliable.
I believe he also said it could install from USB as well, instead of like any other kind of media, like instead of having to burn it to a disk. That's fascinating. Yeah. So, yeah, I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I guess you might need I wonder if you need a floppy to do that. I guess it'll depend on the BIOS of what it boots from, but if it boots from a floppy and then goes to the USB, copies everything across, yeah, that'll be absolutely brilliant. Link in the show notes, as always, to have a look at that.
Time now for our community question of the week. And last week we asked the question, what modern game should be demade? What game, what platform, and why? Nice short question. So, Dave, are we out of contest mode?
We will be out of contest mode now, right now. That's a slam. The door's not slam shut. You can still add your comments, but the door is now slam shut on the secrecy of which comment is top.
Do you want to take the first answer, Dave?
Yeah. So, Pajako. Oh, Pajako, Paul. He says, Tetris as a graphical text adventure. You have an L-sheep. It's falling What now? Move piece left. Okay, the piece moves left by 1 position. What now? Rotate piece left. Sorry, I can't do that. The piece drops down 1 position. What now? Rotate piece counterclockwise. Okay, the piece rotated counterclockwise. What now?
He ends by saying it's riveting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Next answer comes from Fuskit, says Tomb Raider as a Dizzy-style platform adventure on the C64, Spectrum, and Amstrad CPC to demonstrate how similar the gameplay is, and that someone at Core must have noticed. Every aspect of the gameplay could be retained except its 3D view, and I'd finally get to shoot the bloody Armorog from FWD. I don't know what that is. What's the Armorog from FWD? Anyone? Must be a
I don't know.
Fantasy World Dizzy, FWD. So an
Oh, yeah,
Armorog.
Fantasy World does. Yeah. I know that. The Armorog, yeah.
Right,
Yeah, I get it.
so you can shoot that. Yeah, that works. A 2D Tomb Raider. Surely that's been done by someone somewhere. No?
Well, Colony Activist replied to comment and says, yes, it has.
Oh, okay.
It's a side-on platform puzzle on mobile.
There were a lot of those for mobile devices, and also the Game Boy Advance had a lot of they took these 32-bit 3D kind of games and made them side scrollers, for instance. So,
Clint, do you want to take the next answer?
yeah, from Frosty Cheesecake 954, Dredge in the style of Sid Meier's Pirates. Would love to see some 8-bit Lovecraftian horrors. I agree. I love Dredge, and that almost kind of feels like an old school, very simple. Could be a 16-bit, 8-bit game already. So yeah, make that more.
Yeah,
Put that on DOS.
Who's replied to that comment there, Clint?
King of your fart. Fantastic idea. Yes, I agree, Fart King.
Lots of other answers. What else have we got? We've got another Tomb Raider in there from It's Me Thyroid. We've got
Sybil 66
what did they
says
say?
Baldur's Gate 3 in the style of Ultima 4 on the PC, but still using the screen-sized FX and speed of the modern GFX. Think Dead Cells.
Colony Activist says Shenmue as a groundbreaking industry influential game on the Sega Mark III.
Right, Clint, Shenmue. Tell us, what do you think about Shenmue?
Shenmue, yeah, it's fine. I played it a little bit on the Dreamcast and thought it was all right. I much more enjoyed the Yakuza games, which I feel like are the sort of spiritual successor from Sega on that front. Mm-hmm. Very similar things where you have the sort of Japanese world that's almost open but not, and you can play classic Sega arcade games in it. And that was more of Yakuza.
Is Shenmue the most influential game ever made of all time?
No, it isn't.
In the world,
it's very much influential to certain folks. Put it that way. Yes.
The debate rumbles on. And that brings us to our new question of the week for this week, which is, what, in your opinion, and by your own definition, was the first 3D game and why? So feel free to explain it in as much detail as you like, or no detail at all. Just tell us a game. And you can participate at reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro. Do take a moment to subscribe, whatever the button is on whatever platform you're listening to us on.
Give us a review.
Give us a review, a thumbs up, all of that stuff. And check us out at patreon.com/thisweekinretro if you'd like to support us. A huge thank you to Clint from LGR. Thank you so much for joining us again today.
Happy to be here.
And I will be back next week for one more very special show. And then we'll see what the future holds. He's crying.
I am crying. I'm very sad. I'm very sad you're leaving, Neil.
You've got me
I'm sure one or two people will say in the comments that they're sad as well.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. See you next week. Bye-bye. They're waving.
Bye.
This Week in Retro was presented by Neil from the Retro Collective and Dave. It was produced by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.